So we are in the series called The Parables, and if you've got your Bible, if you are using the Bible in front of you, you're going to be looking at Luke chapter 15, verse 11 to 32. We're going to be talking about the parable over there. So Luke chapter 15, 11 to 32. And as I said, for this series, I don't want to use the screen and the scriptures on the screen. I want you to engage with it. I want you to know what Luke is. I want you to know where the verses are, and I want you to be able to read it yourself. I know we read the Bible, but it's always good to just really engage in it. Right, are you there? Luke 15, verse 11 to 32. While you're still looking, we've been in a series called The Parables, and we've been looking at some of the teaching of Jesus in what we come to know as a parable. And what is a parable, we said, is a story that Jesus would use. And often when Jesus was asked a question or he was put into a corner, the way in which he would answer it would be, let me tell you a story, or the why is this, or the why is that, or once upon a time, or okay, I don't think he used it once upon a time, but you know what I mean. Last Sunday we looked at the parable of the great banquet. And if you were not here last Sunday, if you missed that message, I really encourage you to either check it online, on Facebook, on YouTube, or, I normally post it around Tuesday or Wednesday. I put it on a church group. And it's like 35 minutes. Just enjoy it and be blessed by it. And, but if you were not here, I want to remind you that what last week was about was that there is a table that Jesus has prepared for each and every one of us. And there is a place for you at the table. And he wants you to be at his feast and to experience the life with him and to be in a relationship and communion with him. We also celebrated communion on that Sunday. And we said that Jesus invites each and every one of us. And it's not so much that we invite, but what is the response that we're going to get? And we use that parable of the banquet to look at the different responses that people gave to that person. So yeah. Here's the best part of it. It's not an exclusive event, the event of the banquet. It's not limited seats. I said to you, we've got 80 seats available for the Passover, but the great banquet, there is no limited seats. There is, just come. You're invited, you receive the invitation, you need to say, yes, Jesus, I'm going to come to the table, I'm going to be a part of the feast. It's a table and a feast that Jesus welcomes anyone and everyone to. And we are all part of that invitation. So that was more or less last Sunday. This Sunday, we're going to look at a story that for centuries has been called the Parable of the Prodigal Son. It's a very familiar story about a son who receives his inheritance from the father. He goes and squanders everything, only to return home to a gracious, kind father. We know this story so well, sometimes it's hard to think about that story or to read it for yourself in a different kind of way or in a fresh kind of way. Or we think we know everything there is to know about that particular story. It's an important story, and it's a story that's not just about the one son. The title would suggest that once the lost son comes home, all would be well and everyone would live happily ever after. The end, right? But it's not like that. It's only the first half of the story with regards to that son. Because there is another son in the story. There are two brothers in the story. And this morning, can I see a quick show of hands? How many of you are the oldest sibling in your family? Okay? Few. All right. How many of you are the youngest sibling in the family? Okay. So how many of you are the youngest? We've seen how many of you are the oldest. We've seen. So I take it those who didn't put your hand up, either you're an only child or you're somewhere in the middle. Okay. Great. That's the best place to be, by the way, in the middle. The middle child is the healthiest, is the cleverest, best looking, and it's just, the middle child just got it all together. By the way, I'm a middle child. This parable about the prodigal son is really a story about two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother. The only focus on the journey of the younger brother would be to miss half of the story. And that's what we do, is yes, Jesus is telling the story so we can hear about the younger brother and the graciousness of God and so on. But this morning I want us to look at the full story together. And I want to suggest that it wasn't just the younger brother who was lost in the story. I don't know if you ever read it in this way or thought about it in this way, but I want to suggest this morning it was also the older brother who was lost and estranged from his father. To understand the context of the story, we have to remember who Jesus was talking to when he told the story. Who was sitting in the audience that day when Jesus told the story? So let's look at the beginning of chapter 15 of Luke, and then we'll go to the verses that I want us to focus on. But in the beginning of chapter 15 of the book of Luke, it says, "Now the tax collectors and sinners all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, 'This man welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" So let's start there. At the beginning of Luke identifies the people who were listening to Jesus, telling this parable to a diverse group of people. On the one side, you have the sinners and the tax collectors. Let's just call them the outsiders, because we've learned in previous times what tax collectors were regarded to, and obviously sinners within the culture of that day also were outsiders. They are the misfit, they are the outcasts of society. They are the immoral, the irreligious people. They would never darken the door of a church. They will never be welcomed into the church. They don't go to Bible study. They're never given anything for anyone. They're selfish, they're idealistic, and they just live life the way they want to live it. That's the one kind of people that are listening to Jesus. Then on the other side, the other category of people, let's call them the insiders. They are the Pharisees, they are the teachers of the law, they are the ones with the membership to the temple, they have the secret handshake when they meet each other, they are part of the holy huddle, they go to church every single week without missing a weekend, they tithe the right amount every time, they go to a Bible study or a home group, they serve, they volunteer, they do everything a model Christian would do. And you have this crowd listening to Jesus and trying to trap Jesus. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law. And you have the sinners and the tax collectors are there. They're all the people that Jesus is speaking to and sharing this story that we're talking about. Now, if the only people sitting in front of Jesus were the sinners and the tax collectors, in other words, the outsiders, then the first half of the story would be more than enough to express the point about the Father's heart, wouldn't it? Then you're a lost son and coming home because your Father loves you. But Jesus wouldn't be ignoring the other half of his audience, would he? So today he portrays the older brother, this other son, the one who stays at home and works for the family, and he's the responsible one. Jesus does this because he wants his audience to compare and contrast the two brothers and see where they find themselves in the story. So Jesus begins to tell the story, and as I said, you know it well. There was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the young son got together all he had, set off from a distant country, and squandered his wealth in wild wilderness. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of the country. He sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out to go to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." So he got up and he went to his father. So we know that story. We know that story, and often we stop right there, right? Now the youngest son asks his father for his share of the estate, and it's easy to miss this when we read the story, but Jesus' original audience would have been completely shocked by a request like that. They would have completely lost it when they heard the son ask for that request. You see, to receive his share of the estate would only happen after his father died. When the father passes away, his property will be divided between his children. And here, in this case, his two sons. But to ask for his share of the estate while the father is still alive would be a sign of deep, deep disrespect. And honor, in the time of Jesus, was a virtue to be reckoned with. But even more and worse than that, it would be utter rejection from the family. In other words, the youngest son would be saying, "I'm done with this family. I don't want to be a part of it anymore. I'm going off on my own. And by the way, give me what is mine." Now, Jesus' original listeners would be completely shocked that this young man, this young son, is making this request. But here is the more shocking thing. The father grants the requests. The father grants the request. The listeners here would not have known a single father and would not have heard of an incident where a father would have responded in this kind of way. Any other father would have driven their son out of the family and would have disciplined him and reprimanded him and would have cut him off from their life. He would have been cut off from his family and from his community. But instead, this father responds by granting the request of the younger son. And after a while, we are not told how long it took him, but he grants the request. He gives it to him. The son goes off with his inheritance, and he recklessly squanders all of it. After a while, he hits rock bottom, and as it happened, things were getting worse and worse. The famine hits the land. So not only does he have nothing left and he wastes everything, but the people in the country that he was at, he had nothing, absolutely nothing. Scholars tell us that in ancient time, or even just 100 years ago, if famine hit any part of the world, easily 1 million people could die of starvation. So imagine what kind of impact and toll a famine would have had 2,000 years ago, as Jesus is telling the story about a son who has lost everything and now he's in a country that has absolutely nothing. And you can imagine those who are righteous sitting there going, serves him right. I told you so. What do you expect? God is punishing you. And he remembers back home, my dad's servant and more than enough, more than me. Maybe I can go back there. I know I won't be welcome to the family, so maybe I can ask for a job and be hired back into the family, and I can work my way back and I can earn my keep. That's what I'll do. And he comes up with this plan, and he rehearses the plan, and he decides to go back home. And this is what happened. Jesus continues the story. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servant, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and he's alive again. He was lost and is found, so they began to celebrate. This story is not going the way anyone would have expected, is it? The son is heading home, and he's broken, and he's in need. He has this script, apologies in his pocket. He's ready to come back to the dad and beg for mercy. Instead, what happened is his father sees him far away off and recognizes the way his son walks. You know, one of us have this kind of walk that you can recognize that person from far away. He recognizes him to be his son, and he runs to him. It's like he's standing at the end of the driveway and he sees his son coming in, and his immediate reaction is to be filled with compassion. He runs up to his son, he embraces his son, and then he kisses his son. Meanwhile, the son is trying to explain himself, and he starts off this script that he's got in his pocket. Dad, hold on a second, I want to explain myself. Let me talk, Dad, and then you can talk. I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm just looking for a job. And the father ignores him. He ignores everything his son is saying. The father doesn't want to listen. Then the response of the father is what's so incredible about this story. He says, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. You see, the best robe would have been his own robe, the father's robe. It would have been the most important piece of clothing in the family that signifies a patriarch, because they would have taken over the father's business, the father's inheritance. The father was saying, go get the robe, the best robe, and put it on my son. But it doesn't stop there, because he says as well, put a ring on his finger. You see, the ring would have symbolized a reunion with the family. It was the family ring, a symbol that he belonged in this home and in this family. When my father died, he left me his engagement ring. There is an amazing story attached to this ring, which I won't bore you about it, but it was a ring that was given to me. I don't wear it, I keep it somewhere safe. And one day, I will give it to them. It's a family ring, it's a family tradition. Bring the ring and put it on his finger. And he doesn't just stop there with the robe and the ring. He goes on and says, and the sandals on his feet. See, this was something only a master would experience, because a servant would come and put shoes on the feet of the master. The son comes home expecting to be a servant, to work in his way and earn his keep, yet now he's being treated like a master. His own father puts the sandals on his feet. He says, put on the sandals on his feet, a ring on his finger, and put the best robe around him. Then the father says, go and kill the fattened calf. See, for this family to have fattened calves meant it was a wealthy family. Meant that they've saved for this particular celebration. Meat wasn't something people had every day, so this was something that would be saved for a very special occasion. The fattened calf would be to feed not just the family, but the entire community for days to come. It was literally going to be a feast. It was for a week-long celebration. The father asked for the family. The only thing I could compare this to maybe is if your family had a vintage bottle of wine. Okay? and you are saving this wine for a big milestone celebration, like maybe a big anniversary or a big birthday, or maybe the birth of a child or a grandchild. You understand what I'm saying? You're storing this up and you're waiting to open it on the most special occasion. But your son comes home and tells you he has wrecked your car. You reach for that bottle? Maybe your daughter comes home and says she has flunked out of school and she has given up on education, and yet you had ideas for her to go to varsity, and she said, I'm just not going to varsity. Varsity is not for me. Do you reach out for that bottle? Because that's precisely what the father did. His son comes and tells him, I messed up. That money gave you, gone. Who knows, maybe he even ended up in debt, so the father still had to pay the debt. I don't know. I'm stipulating here. But that's what the father did. He reached out for that wine. For that bottle of wine. The son comes home and he says, Dad, I've messed up. And the father says, kill the fattened calf. We call this parable the parable of the prodigal son. But it's easy to assume you understand what the word prodigal means. Now, do yourself a favor and look what the word prodigal means. The word prodigal actually means reckless, extravagant. Recklessly extravagant. Having spent everything. We call the younger son the prodigal son because he has and was recklessly extravagant with his inheritance, wasn't he? But notice now, who is the one who is being recklessly extravagant? The father. Who is the one spending everything he has to show compassion, to show grace, to show forgiveness, and to welcome and celebrate the fact that the son was gone and now he's back home? It's the father. Even though the son had lost everything, now it's the father's turn to pour everything he has left back onto the son who has come home. What this tells us is that this is his acceptance. It's not reliant on an apology. There's nothing this young son can do to earn it back or to deserve that. The father simply gives. It's a gift. It's free. It's his. But the story doesn't end there. And to stop it there will do also injustice to the story. Sometimes most of us stop there. But there's more to the story. There's a second part. Remember, this man has 2 sons. And Jesus goes on to tell us that meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing, so he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. The servant replied, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother becomes angry and refuses to go in, so his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answers his father. This is the older son. He says, look, all these years I've slaved for you and never disobeyed your orders. That you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when the son of yours who squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for me. My son, my son, the father says, you're always with me and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead. And now he is alive. He was lost. Now he's found. Now everybody who's listening is on the edge of their seats because this story is very different. The ending or the thing in the story is very different to what they know. And they're wondering what's going to happen next. Is the family going to be reunited? Are the two brothers going to reconcile and make up? While all these thoughts are passing through the mind, Jesus stops talking. That's the end of the story. And he uses the art of a cliffhanger moment. He keeps people wondering, what? You can't stop there. What's next? What's going to happen next? What is the father going to do? Is the brother going to do something to his other brother? But this is showing how Jesus is such a genius about telling the story. And he creates this tension so the listeners have to listen in the process and go to a deeper place, a deeper spiritual truth that he's trying to reveal in there. You see, there's a story behind that story. And the story behind the story, we are the people in that story. We are the characters of the story. We have an influence in the way in which the plot is going to take. What Jesus is doing in the story is completely redefining the category that people have and the understanding of what it means to have a relationship with the Father. He's shattering the categories about who is good and who is lost, who is right and who is wrong, what it takes to be welcomed back and what love looks like. Jesus has these people on the edge of the seat. You see, the older brother comes home, and rightfully so, he's furious, he's upset, and he hears that there's a party going on for his younger brother, the irresponsible brother who went and squandered all the inheritance. Now, it's the older brother's turn to disgrace his father. And the way he does that is by refusing to enter into the house and not joining in the celebration. Remember, this is the father's party. He's the one hosting it. He's hosting the party for his son who has now come home, and everyone is invited. The entire community is invited. But this older son is the one who refuses to accept the invitation. So he's now disgracing the father, and the father comes out yet again to try to retrieve his son and have him come back home into the house. And listen to the way that older brother responds. He says, look, I don't know about you, but I would never speak to my father I would never talk to my dad like that. If I ever talked to my dad the way he spoke to his dad, I wouldn't be alive today. My dad would kill me if I spoke to him like that. He would murder me. But this is what the older son says to his father. He says, look, all these years I've slaved for you. Really? Since when doing the dishes is slavery? Since when asking you to take garbage out is slavery? Since when cleaning where the animals are is slavery? And he goes on and says, I have done everything you ever commanded me to do. I obeyed you completely, yet never once did you offer me a goat so that I can celebrate with my friends. You see, he uses the term goat instead of a fattened calf because commentators will tell you that a goat was worth about 1/10 of the value of a fattened calf. The older brother is not only upset and furious, but he's being sarcastic to his father. He's being rude to his father, and he's speaking to his father in a very disrespectful and a very demeaning kind of way. He says, look, you've never even acknowledged my righteousness and my goodness. This is the way he responds to the oldest son. The father responds rather than fighting fire with fire, again with extravagant grace. He says to his older son, look, my son, you have always been with me, and here's the thing, everything that I have is yours. It has always been yours. The father is telling the older son, who was upset that he's spending his resources on his younger brother, this is all yours. It's always been yours. You just had to ask. At this point in the story, what we have to realize is that both sons are lost. and are separated from the Father. The young son was lost because of his bad behavior and his immorality. He lost everything. But the older son is also lost, isn't he? He's separated by his good behavior, by his self-righteousness, and by his moral fortitude. He's thinking somehow that he deserves more favor and more grace and more love than the other brother. The older brother is lost in his own self-righteousness. They both think the father is keeping track of who's doing what. But the father doesn't. Essentially what the father is saying, wait, did you think all this time your good deeds were earning you something? Did you not know that everything was already yours? You have misunderstood me just as much as your younger brother. You have been lost in your own goodness. And Jesus tells a parable like this because it has all kinds of stories in it. Remember who are his audience? Who are the people who are listening to Jesus? The story is shocking them. It has all these edges to it, and the different people now feeling uncomfortable. Who is he talking to? Is he talking to the lost crowd or the found crowd? Is he talking to the insiders or is he talking to the outsiders? Jesus is inviting you into this story because remember I said when Jesus tells a story, there's a story inside the story, a story behind the story, and in the story behind the story, you are the characters. And here's the question I want to leave with you this morning. Which son are you? Which son are you? Where do you find yourself in the story? Are you the one who has always been good? You've always played by the rules, you've never strayed from the path, and you feel like God owes you something? Maybe you are the prodigal. Maybe you've strayed away and you come back, and you strayed and you've come back, and you're ashamed of what you've done, and you maybe keep yourself away from coming home because you don't feel worthy of coming home. Last week I had a conversation with a lady who used to be so involved in the church, not this church but another church, was so involved in the church, and she, like the prodigal son, wants to come home, but what's keeping her is herself. Will I be accepted in the church? Will my Father accept me back? These are the kind of questions that she's asking, and as long as she's asking those questions, she's not here, is she? She's up there, still lost. And there's so many people like that. There are so many people who used to be at home, and for some reason left home, and they don't come home because of their own ideas. Here's another question I want to ask you to think about. What do you think God thinks when he thinks about you? This is an important question because what you think God thinks about you will impact what you think about God. If you could think God looks at you and is angry and is upset, you're going to assume God is uptight and strict and unreasonable. But you know that he's not. You see, the father went out to meet his youngest son. The father went out to meet his older son. The father comes and meets us. Not us him, but he meets us. And he says, put my robe on him. Put my garment of praise on her. Turn beauty from ashes. Forgive her. Look, no one is left behind. No one condemns you, neither do I. You see, when the Father comes and meets us, he brings us and he says there's no condemnation for him or her. When the Father runs out and meets us. And by the way, running was not a good thing to do. Especially in those days, it wasn't looked upon as lightly. When the Father runs towards us, He welcomes us. He forgives us. He restores us. This morning, if you are one of those brothers, whether the older brother or the younger brother, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which brother you are. Because it's all about the Father, who extravagantly spends everything on the cross. He gave out everything. His one and only Son. And whoever believes in that Son will have everything. Will have everything. And that's the invitation for us today. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you this morning for the important reminder of your radical love. As the kids earlier sang, a reckless love, extravagant love, prodigal kind of love, a love that we cannot earn, a love that we cannot do anything to deserve it, yet it is your nature to show grace and compassion and love. God, whether we are in the inside category or the outside category, we know you love all of us. Wherever we stand on the spectrum, we find ourselves lost in our own way. We find ourselves seeking approval because of our behavior and the things that we do or feel like we don't deserve anything because of where we've been. Yet you are the compassionate, you are the merciful, you are the loving Father who waits for us and who runs to us and who is compassionate and patient and longs to be in a relationship with us. Father, this morning we just come into your love. We open our hearts to it. Would you enter into every space, every crevice of who we are? Would you reside within the deepest chambers of our heart, reminding us of your goodness, reminding us of your faithfulness, reminding us that you are the one who runs to us. When you bring us home, oh, what a joy it is. What a joy it will be. For there are no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And we pray